Hey friends, it's your girl Mia. This is Mia Horror Stories. And tonight's story, the emergency alert said do not trust anyone who looks like you is told in darkness. The screen will stay black, so you can simply listen, imagine, and feel every moment without distraction. Trust me, the build-up matters, and the ending is where the real chill hides. So don't look away, and don't leave early. The first thing that felt wrong wasn't dramatic. It was the kind of wrong you could talk yourself out of. The automatic doors at the Logan Airport arrivals level kept opening for nobody. They'd slide apart with their soft pneumatic hiss, spill a rectangle of January air onto the warm tile, then close again. Open, close, open, close. Every time they opened, the draft lifted the edge of a paper coffee sleeve someone had dropped, making it scoot and spin like it was trying to escape. I stood there with my phone in my hand and my backpack strap digging into my shoulder, watching it happen while my brain did what it always does: search for an explanation that wouldn't make me look ridiculous if I said it out loud. Motion sensor glitch. Reflections. A bag rolling past. A maintenance issue that would get logged when someone felt like it. Behind me, a family argued quietly in Portuguese over a stroller. Someone's ringtone, tinny piano notes, kept restarting because they weren't answering. A floor buffer hummed somewhere out of sight, steady as a distant engine. Everything normal. Everyone tired. Nobody looking up long enough to notice the doors doing their little nervous tick. Then my phone buzzed like it had been waiting for me to pay attention. Emergency, alert, seek immediate shelter. Do not trust anyone who looks like you for a second. I didn't understand the words as words. They sat there, capital letters with a government font, as if I'd been sent a prank in the exact wrong wrapper. My thumb hovered over the screen. The alert had that sterile tone they use for hurricanes and chemical spills. No emoji, no link, just instructions that were both too clear and completely unusable. Don't trust anyone who looks like you. I looked up automatically, like the ceiling might clarify it. The doors opened again. Empty. A sharp exhale of cold air carried in the smell of jet fuel and wet wool. Somebody laughed near baggage claim, one quick bark that died fast, like they'd surprised themselves. I glanced around at faces the way you do when you've dropped something valuable, and your first irrational thought is that someone already took it. People had their own emergencies: lost luggage, crying toddlers, texts from someone waiting outside. A man in a red Sox cap scrolled with a frown. A woman in a business blazer stared at her lock screen like it had insulted her. And then, like a wave reaching shore, all the phones started buzzing. Not in unison, but close enough to make the sound overlap into a collective insect hum. A ripple went through the crowd. Heads lifted. People stopped walking. The stroller argument paused mid-sentence. The piano ringtone died, replaced by the harsh vibration tone most people only used for alarms. Someone said, "What the hell is this?" Another voice, sharp with annoyance, Is this a joke?" I swallowed and stepped back from the doors, because the doors were wrong and my phone was worse, and my body wanted a wall at my back. That's when I saw my reflection in the glass, on the right-hand side, airport, lighting flattening my face, making me look like a tired version of myself. Eyes too wide, cheeks slightly hollow from a week of travel and bad food. I'd always hated seeing myself in public glass. It made me aware of my posture, my expression, what my mouth did when I wasn't controlling it. I'd spent years training myself not to look nervous when I was nervous. I could feel my jaw working as I reread the alert. My mind tried to file it under technical glitch, but my pulse didn't listen. The alert had an authority that bypassed logic. You can ignore a stranger. It's harder to ignore the system you've been trained to treat as real. A tap landed on my shoulder. I flinched too fast, too obvious, and turned. A woman stood beside me, holding a small rolling suitcase by the handle, like she might swing it if needed. Her hair was short and damp at the ends, as if she'd rushed through a shower. She wore a puffer coat that looked new, still crisp, and her cheeks were flushed from the cold. "Sorry," she said, and her voice had that slightly breathless edge of someone who doesn't like talking to strangers, but has decided it's necessary. "Did you get that alert too?" She angled her phone toward me. Same message, same ugly sentence. My instinct was to nod and keep moving my private flaw on full display. Avoidance. If I could just step away from confusion, maybe it would resolve behind me. But the doors hissed again, and a small cluster of people closer to baggage claim started arguing louder, and I realized walking away wasn't the same as leaving. "Yeah," I said. My throat felt dry, like I'd been sleeping with my mouth open on the plane. "I got it. I'm Evan Mercer, 29, male. I live in Somerville, Massachusetts. I work for a small cybersecurity consulting firm that mostly does boring audits for hospitals and mid-sized companies that still run half their systems on something nobody remembers installing. I'm not a hero. I'm not a fighter. I'm the guy people call after the breach to explain what went wrong in words they can repeat to their boss without admitting they ignored every warning. My everyday motive that day was painfully simple. Get home, get my car from the economy lot, shower, and sleep in my own bed. My private fear, one I never say out loud, is that when things go wrong, my first reaction is to freeze and calculate instead of acting. And someday that pause is going to cost someone more than embarrassment. The woman's eyes flicked from my face to the glass beside us, then back, like she'd already been thinking the same impossible thing. "I'm Nina Kessler, 34, female," she said, quick, as if naming herself made her more real. "I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm telling you. I don't like this. Me neither, I said, which was a useless understatement, but it steadied her a fraction. People often just want to hear their own fear echoed back. A man shoved past us with a rolling duffel, muttering into his phone. No, I'm telling you, it's on everyone's screen. It's not me. No, I'm not high. Jesus. A uniformed airport employee, blue shirt, badge clipped crooked, walked toward a growing knot of confused passengers and raised her hands. Everybody, we're aware of the alert, she called, voice practiced. Please remain calm. We're contacting. Her sentence got swallowed by the general noise. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Remain calm." It says, "Don't trust anyone who looks like you." What is that supposed to mean? Another person laughed, too loud, like they were trying to turn it into a joke by force. Maybe it means don't trust your doppelganger. Great. Fantastic. That word, doppelganger, hit the air and stuck there. I watched Nina's mouth tighten. She looked, suddenly, as if she regretted approaching me, and I felt the same regret mirrored back from my own chest. Not because she'd done anything, because the alert had turned every human interaction into a logic puzzle with missing pieces. The automatic doors kept opening. Open. Close. Open. A security officer appeared near the curbside, speaking into a radio, eyes darting. Not panicked, not calm, focused, like the kind of person who has a checklist and is irritated the world isn't matching it. I pulled my backpack strap higher and tried to think like I do at work. Assess. Context. Threat model. Emergency alerts can be spoofed, but not easily at scale. The wireless emergency alert system has controls. It's not like a group text. If this was real, something had triggered it, someone with access, or someone who had found a way around the access. If it wasn't real, then someone wanted everyone to believe it was, which meant the message itself was part of the event. Maybe it's a cyber thing, I said before I could stop myself. Talking to fill the space. Talking to convince myself I had a handle on it. Nina tilted her head. A cyber thing, a hack, I said. A fake alert. It's possible. Okay, she said, but her eyes didn't soften. But why that message? I didn't have an answer, and not having an answer made my stomach feel like it was dropping through an elevator shaft. A harsh chirp sounded from the ceiling, one of those airport announcements that usually tells you not to leave your bag unattended. The speakers clicked. Static hissed. For a heartbeat, the whole arrivals hall seemed to lean toward the sound. The voice that came through wasn't the usual warm recorded cadence. It was live, slightly too close to the microphone. A man breathing with the clipped tone of someone reading off a screen in a hurry. Attention, all passengers and staff in Terminal B arrivals, he said. This is Logan Airport Operations. We are temporarily restricting access to the roadway outside arrivals. Please remain inside the terminal and move away from all exterior doors and windows. We will provide further instructions shortly. The announcement ended with another burst of static, like the speaker system itself didn't like what it had just been asked to say. People started talking over each other, volume rising, as if everyone's fear needed to be louder than the next person's. A few tried the doors anyway, tugging on the handles when the automatic system paused. The doors stuttered, opened halfway, then closed again, as if someone behind the scenes had cut their power and they were dying in place. A child began to cry, not a dramatic wail, more a confused, exhausted sound, like an animal that doesn't understand why the routine has changed. Nina's fingers tightened around her suitcase handle until her knuckles paled. "I need to get to my sister," she said. "She's waiting outside." "Outside is restricted," I said, and heard how stupid that sounded. Restricted by whom? For what? She glanced toward the glass wall facing the curb, but it was crowded with people pressing close, trying to see through reflections and bodies. Beyond the glass, the light had shifted blue-white flashes that painted the ceiling in pulses. Police lights. Maybe an ambulance. Maybe something else. My phone buzzed again. Not another alert, just a text from my coworker, Jonah. "You at Logan. Heard something's going down." My hands were trembling enough that I almost dropped the phone. I shoved it into my pocket like it could make noise on its own. Nina looked at me. "What do we do?" That was the moment the story could have gone back to normal, if I'd shrugged, if we'd both laughed, if someone official had stepped in and said, "False alarm, folks. Sorry for the inconvenience." But the doors had stopped their nervous opening. The announcement had been real. The lights outside weren't from a maintenance truck, and the alert still sat on my screen like a dare. A woman in a gray hoodie near us said into her phone, "No, Mom, I'm not leaving. They said stay inside." "Yes, I know, but..." Her voice cracked on the last word. On the other side of the glass, a figure moved along the curb line. For a second, I thought it was a police officer. Then I realized it was just a person in a dark coat walking fast, head down, weaving between stopped vehicles. The strange part wasn't the speed. It was the way a few people near the window recoiled, like they'd recognized something they didn't want to name. Nina stepped closer to me without meaning to, shoulder almost brushing mine. "We can go deeper inside," I said, because it was the only option I could say out loud that didn't involve standing here like bait. Away from the windows. Find information. A gate agent. A desk. "Or we leave," she said, voice thin, "before whatever's outside comes inside." I stared at the glass, the reflections, the flashing blue-white light bleeding around the edges, and felt my brain split into two tracks. The part that wanted to obey the announcement, and the part that hated being corralled without understanding why. Nina's suitcase wheels squeaked as she shifted her weight. A choice. Stay with the crowd and trust the system, or move, find a different route, a different explanation, maybe a way out that wasn't the obvious one. And hanging over it all, like a sentence you couldn't stop rereading: do not trust anyone who looks like you. I looked at Nina again, then at my own face in the glass, distorted by the airport's harsh lighting. Okay, I said, making a decision I wasn't sure I deserved to make. Let's move. And we started walking away from the doors into the thicker part of the terminal, where there were more people, more noise, and fewer places to see what was happening outside. Behind us, the speakers clicked again, as if someone was about to say something they didn't want to say. We didn't make it 10 steps before the terminal lighting flickered. Not a full blackout, just a dip like someone briefly dimmed the world, then everything snapped back a shade brighter than before. The kind of flicker you normally ignore, except nobody ignored it this time. A ripple of sound followed it. Sharp inhales, a few curses, the squeal of a suitcase wheel dragged sideways. Power surge, Nina said, but it sounded like she was asking me to confirm gravity still worked. Probably, I said. Probably was doing a lot of work lately. We moved with the flow, deeper into the terminal, away from the glass wall and the doors. The air smelled different here, less jet fuel, more disinfectant, and fried food from a closed kiosk. The ceiling was lower, the lights harsher. A place designed to keep people moving, not lingering. Another announcement crackled overhead, half a sentence swallowed by static. Temporary suspension. Remain where you are, remain where you are, Nina muttered. They keep saying that. Ahead of us, a bottleneck had formed near a corridor that led toward the parking garage connector. A uniformed TSA agent stood sideways, arms out, blocking access. You can't go that way, he said, voice strained but controlled. Garage access is closed. Closed why? Someone demanded. Because it is, the agent said, and that answer, true but useless, poured gasoline on the mood. Voices rose. Someone shoved. The agent glanced back over his shoulder, like he was hoping backup would materialize if he stared hard enough. Nina slowed, then stopped. My car's in the garage, she said. If we can get there, we can just leave. We don't have to, she gestured vaguely back toward the arrivals hall. Whatever this is, I felt the pull of that logic immediately. Motion as safety. Escape equals control. It was the same instinct that made people try to drive out of wildfire zones at the same time and jam the roads until no one could move. Before I could say that, my phone vibrated again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a missed call notification from my own number. I stared at the screen long enough that Nina noticed. What? She asked. I turned the phone so she could see. Her eyes flicked to the number, then to my face. That's not funny, she said, and then quieter. Is that part of it? I didn't answer, because my brain had slipped into the cold, analytical mode it uses when panic gets too loud. Phone number number spoofing is trivial. Anyone with the right tools can make it look like a call came from anywhere. That explanation fit neatly, too neatly. I checked the timestamp. 30 seconds ago. Did it ring? Nina asked. No, I said. It just logged it. She swallowed. My sister tried to FaceTime me earlier. It didn't go through. Said connection failed. We stood there, the crowd pressing around us, and I realized something that made my stomach drop. The cellular network felt wrong. My signal bars were there, but data crawled. Messages hung in that gray limbo between sent and failed. Hey, a man said sharply behind us. You two gonna move? We moved. We ducked into a side corridor near a closed Hudson News. Its metal gate, pulled down halfway like it, had been interrupted mid-panic. The corridor was quieter. The noise of the main terminal muffled into a low roar. A janitor's cart sat abandoned against the wall, one wheel still slowly spinning, squeaking once per rotation. Nina leaned against the wall and exhaled hard. Okay, we need a plan. My flaw pressed in on me then, heavy and familiar. The urge to think instead of act, to model scenarios until one emerged clean and safe. What kind of plan? I asked, buying time. Information, she said immediately. We need to know what's actually happening. If this alert is real, if it's not, if there's a fire or a shooter or, she stopped herself. I don't want to spiral, but standing here isn't helping. She was right. And also, standing here felt marginally safer than moving without knowing where. A man staggered into the corridor from the other end, breathing hard. He was in his early 40s, beard untrimmed, jacket half-zipped like he'd dressed in a hurry. He slowed when he saw us, then raised his hands slightly, palms out. A peace gesture. Hey, he said. Sorry. Just do you know where the bathrooms are? They shut the ones near baggage claim. Down that way, I said, pointing. He nodded, then hesitated. His eyes lingered on my face for half a beat too long. You look like, he trailed off, shook his head. Never mind. Bad timing. He hurried past us, footsteps echoing. Nina watched him go. Did you see that? Yeah, I said. He was about to say you look like someone. I didn't like the way she said it, like she was testing the words before trusting them. A sharp bang sounded from somewhere above us. Not a gunshot, more like a metal door slamming shut. The lights flickered again, longer this time. When they came back, a few ceiling panels near us stayed dark. Power's not stable, Nina said. No, I agreed. And if it goes out completely, emergency lights, she said. They have backups. Sure, I said. As long as those backups aren't affected by whatever's causing this. She looked at me. You're doing the thing, I asked. The overthinking thing, she said. Not accusing. Observant. You're trying to solve it in your head instead of doing something. I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it. Because she was right, and because arguing would waste time we didn't have. Okay, I said. Action. We find an airport desk with a live person. Operations. Police. Someone who knows more than the announcements. And if they tell us to remain where we are, she asked. Then we decide if we listen, I said, and felt the weight of that choice settle between us. We stepped back into the flow, angling toward a Delta service desk I could see ahead. The line was already long, people clustered tight, voices raised. A woman behind the counter spoke into a headset, nodding rapidly, eyes flicking between screens. As we got closer, my phone vibrated again. This time it rang. The screen lit up with my own name. Incoming call, Evan Mercer. Nina grabbed my wrist before I could stop her. "Don't," she said. The ringing filled the space between us, absurdly loud to my ears, even though it was just a phone. "It's not real," I said automatically. "It's spoofed." "Then why is it happening now?" she shot back. "Why you?" The call stopped. A voicemail notification popped up immediately. I didn't open it. Around us, other people's phones rang. Not all at once. Staggered. A woman gasped and dropped hers. A man answered and immediately went pale, hanging up without a word. "What are you hearing?" someone shouted. "No idea," another voice said. It sounded like me, that word again. Like. The Delta agent slammed her palm on the counter. "Everyone, please," she shouted. "We are experiencing a systems issue. Remain calm. Do not answer any calls that seem suspicious." "Suspicious how?" someone yelled back. The agent hesitated. Just a fraction, long enough to notice. "Just don't," she said finally. Nina's grip tightened on my wrist. "Evan," she said quietly. "We need to go." "Now, go where?" I asked, even as my body leaned toward hers. "The service stairwell," she said. "I saw one back there. If the power goes out and people panic, this," she gestured at the crowd, "is going to get bad." She wasn't wrong. The density of bodies, the rising volume, the unknown, panic, was a spark looking for oxygen. I hesitated. Stairs meant isolation. No cameras. No easy help. And then my phone buzzed again. A text preview slid down from the top of the screen. From Evan Mercer, "I'm standing right behind you." Nina saw it. I didn't need to show her. She stepped back, eyes scanning the crowd, then locked onto my face again. Searching for something. Confirmation. Doubt. "Okay," she said, voice tight. "Okay, this is the choice." Behind us, someone screamed short, sharp, and the lights went out completely. The emergency lights kicked in a second later, bathing the terminal in red. The scream wasn't alone anymore, and the service stairwell door, just 20 feet away, clicked as if someone had unlocked it from the inside. The service stairwell smelled like dust and old paint, the kind of smell you only notice when you're already on edge. The door swung inward on heavy hinges, then slammed shut behind us with a sound that made Nina jump. Red emergency lights cast everything in a low, pulsing glow. The steps descended in a tight concrete spiral, railing chipped and cold under my palm. A sign on the wall said stair B3, authorized personnel only, the arrow pointing down. Down or up? Nina asked. I hesitated for half a second too long. Up meant offices, control rooms, maybe people who knew things. Down meant tunnels, utilities, garages, isolation. The hesitation cost us. Footsteps pounded from the terminal side of the door. Someone slammed into it, rattling the handle. Open it, a voice shouted. Male, panicked. They're saying the door held. The footsteps multiplied. Down, I said, and we went. First attempt. Find authority underground. The stairwell spat us out into a service corridor that ran parallel to the arrivals level, separated from the public terminal by concrete and metal doors every 50 feet. Overhead pipes dripped slowly, each drop a tiny metronome ticking time forward. The air was cooler here, damp. We moved fast, shoes squeaking on the polished concrete. My lungs burned not from distance, but from adrenaline breathing too shallow. A sign on the wall showed a crude map. Service access, garage/utilities/operations. Operations, Nina said. That's what we want. We followed the arrows, turning left, then right, then through a fire door that banged loudly enough to make us freeze. No footsteps followed. For the moment, we were alone. We found an operations office tucked behind a chain-link gate. The lights were on inside. 2 desks, monitors glowing, empty. Hello, Nina called. No answer. A radio crackled on one desk, then went silent. I leaned in, scanning the screens through the wire. CCTV feeds, some frozen, some live. Terminal B arrivals washed in red emergency light. The curbside feed flickered, then stabilized. Police cruisers angled awkwardly, blocking lanes. People milling where they shouldn't be. And then, on one feed, I saw something that made my chest tighten. A man standing near the arrivals doors. Same jacket as me. Same backpack slung over one shoulder. Same haircut, same slouch. For one electric second, my brain screamed, that's me. Then the feed jumped, pixelated. When it cleared, the man was gone. Evan, Nina said. I realized I'd stopped breathing. Camera lag, I said automatically. Low bandwidth, compression artifacts. Was that someone who looks like me? I said. The words tasted wrong. Or looked like me on a bad feed. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I didn't look. A crash echoed down the corridor. Metal on concrete, followed by shouting. They're coming, Nina said. Yeah, I said. We need another route. We hadn't solved anything. We'd learned one thing. The cameras were compromised or unreliable. Authority wasn't waiting underground to explain this. We were still blind. Second attempt. Reach the garage and leave. We doubled back, took a different branch toward the garage. The corridor sloped downward now, the ceiling lower. The smell shifted, oil, rubber, exhaust. The garage entrance gate was half lowered, like the Hudson News gate upstairs. A procedural failure, not a barricade. Someone had tried to shut it and either lost power or lost nerve. We ducked under. The garage was chaos in a different register, sound swallowed by concrete, red emergency lights casting long shadows between parked cars. Car alarms chirped intermittently, triggered by the power fluctuations. It sounded like nervous birds. Nina headed straight for a blue Subaru halfway down the row. "My car," she said, relief sharp enough to hurt. We reached it. She fumbled the key fob. "Nothing." "Try the door," I said, locked. She tried again. Still nothing. "Battery?" I asked. "No," she said. "It was fine this morning." I scanned the garage. Other people had the same idea. A man yanked at his door, then kicked the tire. A woman stood with her forehead pressed to her windshield, phone clutched uselessly. The garage lights flickered, then dimmed further. Emergency lights here were weaker, spaced farther apart. "This is a systems thing," I said, more to myself. "Power plus access control plus cellular." Someone pulled a big switch. Nina leaned against her car, hands shaking. So we're stuck. Not completely, I thought. The garage had ramps, exits, but police cruisers blocked the main lanes, and the gates were dead. My phone buzzed again. This time, a voicemail auto-played before I could stop it. My voice came out of the speaker, breathing, close to the mic. "Evan," it said, "don't turn around." Nina slapped the phone out of my hand. It skidded across the concrete and stopped near a tire. "That's not funny," she said, voice breaking. "Who is doing this?" I swallowed hard. Someone with access and a sense of timing. A shape moved behind a pillar at the far end of the garage. My heart spiked. "Hey," someone shouted. "Is that?" The shape stepped into the light. It was a janitor pushing a cart. He blinked at us, startled, then raised his hands apologetically. "Sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to scare anyone." The fear drained a notch, leaving embarrassment and anger in its place. Misdirection. My brain labeled it with relief. "Where's security?" Nina asked him. He shook his head. "All over the place. They told us to shelter," but he trailed off, eyes flicking to the darkened gate. "You should go back inside," back where the crowd was panicking. We'd failed again. The garage wasn't an exit. It was a trap with cars instead of people. A siren wailed outside, muffled through concrete. Then came the sound that made the decision for us. A heavy metal gate at the far end of the garage began to descend, grinding loudly. Slowly, irreversibly. People shouted and ran toward it, but it was too far, too slow. When it hit the ground, the echo boomed through the garage like a judge's gavel. "Okay," Nina said, eyes wide. "We can't stay here." "No," I said. "We go up, but not the way we came." Tightening the trap, we found another stairwell marked utilities/mezzanine. Narrower, no windows. The red light here pulsed slower, making everything feel underwater. Halfway up, my calf cramped hard enough that I stumbled. Nina caught my arm. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I lied. My leg throbbed. Adrenaline had been masking it. At the mezzanine level, the door wouldn't open. Nina shoved it again, harder. "Locked," she said. I looked at the access panel, dark, no power. Behind us, footsteps echoed up the stairwell. Not a crowd. One set. Unhurried. My phone buzzed in my pocket, insistent. Nina stared at me. "Don't." The footsteps stopped just below the landing. A voice drifted up. Calm, familiar. "Evan," it said. "We need to talk." My heart hammered so hard it hurt. The voice sounded like me. Not a recording, not distorted. Live, close. Nina backed away from the door, eyes locked on my face, then flicking down the stairs. "That's not you," she whispered. "I know," I said, but knowing didn't make my hands stop shaking. The door behind us, the one leading back down, clicked, then swung open. Light flooded in from below as the emergency lights there surged brighter. We were pinned between a locked door and a voice wearing my sound. The mezzanine door shuddered as the power surged again. The lock disengaged with a dull thunk. The door creaked open. I grabbed Nina's hand. We ran through and slammed it shut behind us, jamming a fire extinguisher handle through the bar, just as something hit it from the other side. The impact rattled the frame. Whatever or whoever was down there, retreat was no longer an option. The mezzanine smelled like hot dust and ozone. Rows of servers lined one wall behind glass, airport systems, networking equipment. The quiet spine that made everything else work. The red emergency lights reflected off the glass, doubling our shadows, so it looked like more people were here than actually were. I dragged a breath into my chest and forced myself to stand upright. My calf burned where it had cramped, the muscle tight as wire. Nina leaned against the door we jammed, listening. Nothing. No pounding. No voice. For 3 seconds, the silence felt like mercy. Then the PA speakers crackled. Not the public announcement voice. No preamble, just sound, my breathing amplified, close, slightly out of sync with my chest. Nina's head snapped toward me. "That's, yeah," I said. "I know." The breathing stopped. My voice came next. Calm, reasonable. The tone I used at work when I needed someone to trust me. "Nina, it's okay. He's confused. I'm up here." Her eyes slid to my face, searching for tells. Sweat, tremor, anything. "Don't listen," I said louder than I meant to. "It's routing through the system. The servers. They are." A sharp pain lanced up my leg as I shifted my weight. I sucked in air through my teeth. "Evan," the voice said gently, "you hurt your leg on the stairs. You don't have to keep running." Nina flinched. "How does it know that?" she whispered. "Because I told my phone." My brain answered before I could stop it. Step counter, health data, microphone, camera, everything I'd ever let collect me. "We shut it down," I said. "We pull power." Nina looked at the server racks. "Won't that Yeah, I said. It'll knock out systems. More chaos. Another pause. A lull where the weight of the choice settled. The door behind us rattled, not slammed, tested. Once, twice. A keycard beeped. Evan, the voice said, closer now. Not through the speakers, through the door, my voice, wearing a body. Open up. Before you hurt someone. Nina backed away from the door, hands up, as if she might catch something thrown. You said don't trust anyone who looks like you, she said to me. What if that means exactly this, I said. Someone using me as the vector. The keycard beeped again. Red light. Denied. A shoulder hit the door. Harder this time. The fire extinguisher handle creaked but held. Okay, Nina said, decisions snapping into place. We pull power. I limped toward the server racks, fingers numb. A big red emergency shutoff sat on the wall, plastic cover intact. The kind of thing you're only supposed to touch if you're sure. Once we do this, I said, we lose lights, locks, everything. Then do it, she said, before it learns something else. Another hit to the door. The frame shuddered. Plaster dust drifted down like gray snow. I flipped the plastic cover and slammed the switch. The servers died with a sound like a collective sigh. The red lights cut out. Darkness swallowed us. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. No voice, no pounding. Just the faint hum of emergency power rerouting somewhere deep in the building. Then a backup light flickered on dim yellow, casting long, ugly shadows. The door went quiet. We stood there, breathing hard, waiting for the other shoe. Seconds passed. A minute. I think, Nina started. The door exploded inward. Wood and metal burst apart as someone threw their full weight against it. The extinguisher handle snapped free, clanging uselessly across the floor. He stumbled through, off balance, catching himself on the frame. He was wearing my jacket. My backpack hung off one shoulder. My face stared back at me, flushed and real, and wrong in a way that made my stomach flip. Not identical. Closer up, the differences showed. A scar near the eyebrow I didn't have. A nose broken once, healed crooked. But from a distance, from a screen, from a glance in panic. Enough. He straightened, eyes locking onto mine. No smile, no theatrics, just intent. Hi, he said, in my voice, out of his mouth. Nina screamed. I moved without thinking, my freeze response finally overridden by pure animal reflex. I grabbed the loose fire extinguisher from the floor and swung. He ducked. The canister clipped his shoulder instead of his head. The impact jarred my arms painfully, but it knocked him sideways into the server glass. It cracked, spiderwebbing. He recovered fast, faster than me. He lunged, tackling me low. We hit the floor hard. The breath left my lungs in a sharp grunt. Pain flared in my leg as his knee slammed into it. Up close, he smelled like sweat and metal, and the same cheap soap I used at home. You should have stayed put, he said, straddling me, hands on my throat. His grip tightened, not crushing, controlled, like he knew exactly how much pressure to use. My vision tunneled. I heard Nina shout my name, distant. I clawed at his wrist, useless. My fingers brushed something hard clipped to his belt, a radio. I ripped it free and smashed it against his jaw. Bone met plastic with a wet crack. He roared, grip loosening just enough. I sucked in air, coughing, and drove my knee up into his ribs. Felt something give. He rolled off me, gasping. Nina was there, swinging the extinguisher with both hands, pure fury and terror. It connected with his forearm. He cried out, dropping to one knee. "Run," I yelled. She hesitated just a second, then bolted toward the far exit. He surged up and grabbed her jacket. I staggered to my feet and slammed into him, all my weight, all my pain. We crashed into the cracked server glass. It shattered completely this time, raining shards. He slipped, fell. I fell with him. We hit the edge of the mezzanine railing together. For a frozen moment, we balanced there, bodies tangled, gravity waiting. He looked at me then, really looked. "You don't even know how easy it was," he said. Blood ran from his mouth, dark in the dim light. "People will believe anything if it sounds like them." His hand scrabbled for purchase on my jacket. I did the math in my head in a flash that felt endless. If I pulled him up, he'd kill me, or Nina, or someone else. If I didn't, my legs screamed as I shifted my weight. "I know," I said, and pushed. He fell. The sound when he hit the concrete below was final. Heavy. Wrong. I sagged against the railing, shaking so hard my teeth clicked. Nina's footsteps echoed back. She stopped beside me, eyes wide, face streaked with dust and tears. "Is he?" she asked. I nodded once. Sirens wailed closer now. Real ones, not muffled. We stood there, neither of us touching the other, staring down at the still shape wearing my face. The lights flickered back on white this time, harsh, unforgiving. And somewhere deep in the building, my phone buzzed. I didn't look. The paramedic kept asking me to rate my pain on a scale of 1 to 10, and every number felt like a lie. I sat on the cold concrete floor of the mezzanine with my back against the railing, a foil blanket tucked around my shoulders like an apology. My throat burned when I swallowed. A bruise was already blooming there, fingertips shaped, purple creeping into yellow. My calf throbbed in a slow, insistent rhythm that matched the distant thud of boots and the murmur of radios. "Just a little pinch," the paramedic said, and then the needle slid in and the world softened at the edges. Not gone, just padded. Below us, on the arrivals level, the airport was waking back up in pieces. White lights on, then escalators, then the dull roar of voices returning to something like normal volume. Every few minutes, someone laughed too loud, brittle. Relief had a sound, and it wasn't pretty. Nina sat a few feet away, wrapped in her own blanket, hands clenched so tightly the knuckles were white. A police officer crouched in front of her, speaking gently, pen moving across a notepad. She nodded at the right places, shook her head at others. Her eyes never went to the edge of the mezzanine. When the officer came to me, I told it straight, as straight as you can tell something that still feels like it happened to someone else. The alert, the calls, the voice, the man. I didn't dramatize. I didn't soften. I learned a long time ago that details survive better than feelings when you're trying to make yourself believed. The officer listened without interrupting. He had kind eyes and a face that suggested he'd seen enough versions of the worst day of someone's life to recognize the shape of it. "You did what you had to do," he said when I finished. I nodded because that was easier than answering. They took my statement twice. Once on the mezzanine, once downstairs in a makeshift interview room near baggage claim that smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant. The questions stayed the same. The answers didn't. In between, a doctor shined a light in my eyes and pressed on my leg until I hissed. "Severe cramp, maybe a minor tear," she said. "You'll walk." "Not today." They wrapped my calf, gave me crutches I didn't want, and told me to watch for dizziness, headaches, anything that felt off. Everything felt off. I didn't tell them that. Nina found me again while I was waiting for discharge papers. She moved carefully, like her body had learned a new set of rules and wasn't sure which ones applied yet. "They are letting people leave in stages," she said. "My sister's still outside. She's okay." "Good," I said, and meant more than the word could carry. We stood there awkward, the way people do after surviving something together when there isn't a script for what comes next. "They said his name," she said finally. "The man's, not yours. He wasn't you, I know," I said, and I did. Rationally. Viscerally was another matter. "They think he had access," she went on. "Contractor credentials. Knew the systems. Knew how to scare people into staying put." "And the alert?" I asked. She shrugged. "Under investigation." That phrase had already started to feel like a blanket someone throws over a mess they don't want to look at yet. We exchanged numbers, hands hovering awkwardly before we hugged, brief, careful, like we were afraid of breaking each other. Then she left, wheeling her suitcase with a slight limp of her own, shoulders hunched as if the world had learned a new way to surprise her. When I finally made it outside, dawn was just beginning to thin the dark. The police lights were gone. The roadway looked like any other early morning at the airport. Tired faces, idling cars, the smell of exhaust and coffee. Ordinary, patched back together. My car was still in the garage. Dead battery. A tow truck driver gave me a sympathetic look while he jump-started it. "Rough night?" he asked. "You could say that," I said, and that was the end of it. At home, my apartment felt unfamiliar in the way hotels do when you've been gone too long. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my phone, which I'd powered off somewhere between the interview room and the curb. I turned it on. No new alerts. No missed calls. Just the lock screen photo I'd set years ago. A nondescript skyline I'd taken from a bridge because it felt safer than a picture of myself. I showered until the water ran cold. Watched bruises surface in the mirror like delayed reactions. Wrapped my leg. Drank a glass of water I didn't taste. Sleep came in fragments. In the days that followed, the story settled into the version people could handle. A security breach. A lone actor. A tragic confrontation. They didn't use my name in the articles. They didn't use his. They talked about the suspect and the victim and the passenger who intervened. The alert was described as malicious and misleading. The impersonation as sophisticated but not unprecedented. My firm put me on leave, not because they had to, because they were decent. Friends texted, then called, then stopped when I didn't know how to answer without hearing my own voice somewhere in the line. At night, I started leaving a lamp on in the living room, not because I was afraid of the dark, because shadows had learned too many tricks. 2 weeks later, I got my phone back from evidence. Everything was intact. Photos, messages, apps, except for one thing. My health app showed a workout logged at Logan Airport at 2:41 a.m. Distance walked. Heart rate recorded. I stared at the timestamp until my eyes ached. It could have been a glitch, a sensor error, a phantom reading. I deleted it. Life resumed its shape. Work emails, grocery lists, the quiet relief of being anonymous again. But sometimes, when my phone rings and I don't recognize the number, my hand hesitates. And once, late at night, half asleep, I could swear I heard my own breathing coming from somewhere just behind me. I turned on the light. There was nothing there. That's tonight's story. If it gives you chills, make sure to like, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and tap the bell so you never miss what's coming next. And if you're still brave enough, there are more dark tales waiting for you right here on the channel. Go watch another if you dare.